This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at Tuesday morning. It's January 9th. The Wolves play in Orlando this evening. We'll do another pod off of that game after the game. That'll be the Wednesday morning show. That'll be Britt and I, but this episode is me and Jace, and we're going to start by talking about where we think the Wolves rank in the Western Conference as of today, 35 games into the season for the Wolves. First, Jace, how are you?
Hey, man. Good. About you?
I'm good. I'm here in Orlando. We're just talking about, like, there's always, like, the little fear that, like, something's going to go wrong. Or, like, for me, I don't travel as much as, like, Chris. So I'm like, you start thinking, like, did I book the right, like, are there multiple airports in the city?
Yeah.
Like that?
Yep.
But I've had
until I'm at the destination and my stuff's at the destination and whatever. Like,
yeah.
I have a little bit of anxiety.
Exactly. Exactly. Just like refreshing. Yeah.
It's like, are you scared of flying? No, I'm scared of all the process around flying.
I'm scared of messing that up. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But it's cool. I'm glad to be on this trip. I think we talked about this before. Like, this is just like an interesting time in the season for the Wolves because it's hard. It's the end of this 16-game run against really good teams, finishing with 4 on the road here, and a time where it would be understandable to, go 1-3, 2-2, or whatever of this 4-game road trip, but also a time where you could be like, okay, they really showed me something here, and they beat a Houston, or if they beat Orlando, or if they beat Boston. It is just also like, it's very different how we're feeling and thinking about the Wolves right now than we were a month ago, as kind of the class or the up there in the Western Conference. And what we wanted to talk about today, you just texted me this after the Dallas game, was like just the text of the Wolves are the blank best team in the West. And it's after the Dallas game. I'm like, I don't know. Let me think about it. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, it was a few hours. I was just like laying in bed thinking about it. Because like, and frankly, like, it just comes down to, like, in the standings, still number 1. But like, I just think that the West, where my whole idea is, like, the top 7 teams are all within 4 games of each other. And like, I don't know if, and this probably we'll get to, I don't know if like Dallas and Sacramento are in that same tier, but like, I just get to like the Wolves, the Thunder, the Nuggets, the Clippers, the Pelicans. And I'm like, you can see all of those teams being the best team in the West at the end of the year. Like, I legitimately think all of them have a path to like winning it. And there's 5 teams that I feel that way about, which is kind of wild. Yeah.
So I kind of have that too, in terms of it being a handful of different teams that I think are close. And to that end, it's like, we need to define what it means to rank these teams, or what makes you the best, what makes you the 4th best. And as I sent to you, I think we should talk about ranking the Western Conference, or assigning the Wolves rank in the Western Conference in 2 ways: by listing the number of teams, one, that we think the Wolves would lose to in a playoff series. And then I think the other way to think about it is just who's going to have a better record the rest of the season, or ranking what the Wolves record will be for the rest of the year. First, I guess you're giving me a look. Do you agree with that, or not?
Yeah, just the record the rest of the way. I probably should have looked more up at like strength of schedule, because that really
I didn't really do that. It's more like
it's kind of where they're at right now thing, right? Like,
yeah,
but like, record is a little fickle in my mind,
for sure,
in terms of that.
Well, so I mean, what do you think the best way to do it is? I mean, the Wolves are the blank best team in the West. Like, we could just throw it out, like, out there. What, like,
I know.
There has to be some sort of.
I don't mind splitting it up. I really don't mind splitting it up where I think they finish. Like, I don't mind predicting like seeding or whatever, or best record the rest of the way. I don't mind that at all. But then I do always think like the best answer in your head is like, who beats who in a playoff series. And I understand, and I do think those are all different depending on matchups. Like those 5 teams I mentioned, I might think Team A beats Team B and Team B beats Team C, but Team C beats Team A, So like, that's not even necessarily like a ranking either. But
it feels like that in the West, right?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
In particular. So I'll just, let's start with the playoff series element of it, because I think, and I'll start with I think if the Wolves, and again, we're doing this January 9th, 35 games into the season, I think the Wolves have recently been hurt by small ball teams that can switch five. At this moment in time, I'm viewing that as broadly the Wolves' worst matchup sort of thing. So I have Phoenix down as a team that I think the Wolves, I'm not saying it'd be a blowout or anything, but I think I would pick Phoenix to win that series. I definitely wouldn't pick Phoenix to win more games for the rest of the year. So that's what I'm saying is two different things. And you're just thinking that means Phoenix is just better.
No,
no,
no. I don't think that means Phoenix is better. Like I think in a vacuum, the Wolves are better. But I don't disagree with you that would be a series that if Phoenix won, I wouldn't be surprised. But I don't think that means Phoenix is better. It's like
it's hard to define.
It is very hard to define. That's where like when I'm thinking about these things, I'm like, well, who's the best one? It totally is like, well, who do I think would win the Western Conference? And I'm like, well, show me the bracket. Like I have to see the bracket. I like to actually answer that question.
That's kind of cool though. It didn't.
Yeah,
I don't think it used to be like that.
I love it. And that's where like I honestly think like that's the playoffs are so crazy and like they'll be so interesting, and they've been kind of interesting these last couple of years, but they will be super interesting. And for like the Wolves, I think it's good that they can kind of morph into different shapes. You know, if like okay, we're going to be really big because we have to play Denver, we're going to go small. Maybe Towns doesn't play as much, you know, or whatever. Like, and or he's playing in different bursts and different lineups, but we're not playing these two guys together. Like those types of things. Like, I think it's going to come down to like adjustments throughout a series for a lot of these teams. Like, I just think there's going to be a lot of great, as long as enough teams don't get hurt to the point where like they don't resemble themselves right now. It would be a phenomenal playoffs, top to bottom. I don't think there's that. Depending on your matchups, I don't know if there's any round where teams would just coast through.
Right.
But Phoenix is a really interesting one. I kind of agree.
Give me your list. Give me your list of the playoff teams, and I think this is one other important qualification. I'm not saying if the playoffs started today. I'm thinking about it when the playoffs come in 45 games. That's when those teams come. So I think to the Phoenix point, what I'm probably doing there is baking in some progression, some time of Beal, Booker, and Durant together, whatever. And that one in particular. I think if the Wolves played the Suns today, maybe I would pick the Wolves. And maybe that's just mostly an indication of how close I think this choice is overall. But that's the way I looked at playoff series. Which teams did you pick?
Okay, I picked the Thunder, the Clippers, and I picked the Pelicans.
Wow, you think the Wolves would beat Denver?
I just do.
Wow.
I just do. I think they match up in a way that I think that they would. I mean, every time, like at full strength, I do think Minnesota would beat Denver.
Wow, that's. I mean,
I understand that. That's I understand that.
Make the case just quickly for. You know,
they just don't have anybody to guard Anthony Edwards. They really don't. If you want to put Peyton Watson in that thing, that's fine. But I just don't think he's there as a player. And I think if you can make them rely a lot on Peyton Watson playing and in the game, then great for Minnesota. Personally, I think that they like Aaron Gordon is not comfortable doing the things in the positions that he puts them in. Aaron Gordon would much prefer to be in a matchup where he gets to take on somebody who's smaller than him. And like, he'll be aggressive in those situations. He's not super aggressive, just like standing in the corner as a spacer, which Minnesota kind of makes him be. Like, I think he looks uncomfortable in these games. Murray, they just have enough guys that like can make Murray and those little runs harder to come by. And like, he was exhausted just trying to score on Nickeil Alexander-Walker in that first round series. And now you have more bodies that you can throw on him. And like I said, I just don't think they have the personnel to match up with Ant. Even Aaron Gordon is like the best matchup for Ant, but I don't know if they would do that with Towns. I don't.
So I thought about that. I think they might go Michael Porter Jr. on KAT this time.
Sure, that makes sense.
Or Michael Porter Jr. on Gobert. And then you put Jokic on KAT and you put Gordon on Ant. They chose in the series last year, and you know, in the majority of these matchups that they've played Denver since in the Gobert iteration, to put Gordon on KAT, and then you have KCP guarding Ant. I wonder if for them in that series they do, because Gordon's the best matchup for Ant, and I don't know if that would be a determining factor or not. But the greatest case, I think, that the Wolves, agreeing with you, would beat Denver in a playoff series is that they don't have anybody to guard Ant, which leads me to be like, all right, if I'm Michael Malone's staff, it can't be the best offensive player on the Wolves that we're conceding something there. So I would wonder how they matched up in that. I did have Denver, again, picking today. I would take Denver over the Wolves there. And I don't know, maybe people think that's controversial, but I think
mine would be more controversial. I mean, like the defending champs, like, you know, they did just, I know Minnesota wasn't healthy, but they did just bounce them in 5 last year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I just, every time, like full strength on full strength, I walk into those games usually being like, I think Minnesota will probably win this game. And it's, again, like, I don't think Minnesota is better than Denver in a vacuum. I don't. I think Denver's a better team than Minnesota in a vacuum. But I think in that matchup, I just like Minnesota there. Like I don't disagree with you on Phoenix. I think Minnesota's way better in a vacuum than Phoenix. And like, I don't think Phoenix would beat Minnesota in a series, but I think it'd be a super interesting series where there'd be a couple games where Minnesota looked really bad.
Right. Okay, so your 3 are Oklahoma City, the Clippers, and the Pelicans that you think would beat them. The 2 I have on my list that you don't are Denver, and I have Phoenix.
Yep.
And I think, again, like I said, Phoenix is maybe a little in the moment. Maybe if I feel better, 25 games from now about the Wolves' ability to play a team like that, or most importantly, kind of to be guarded by a team like that. Maybe I could change that one. Was close. We both agree on Oklahoma City and the Clippers. The Clippers are kind of that on steroids. I'm excited to actually start watching them a little bit more. I was watching their game against the Clippers against the Suns last night, and the Wolves play the Clippers on Sunday.
Yeah.
I think that's my opinion. I'm not sure if this is right or wrong, but has been kind of swayed by how the Wolves have matched up with some of these teams in recent matchups. Like the Pelicans, I actually chose not to put the Pelicans.
Okay.
I said the Wolves would beat the Pelicans, but that's a lot closer in my mind. And I went back and forth on that because of the last 2 times that the Wolves played the Pelicans when they had Zion. But yeah, so we agree on Oklahoma City and the Los Angeles Clippers as beating them. I have Denver on my list. I have Phoenix on my list, and I don't have the Pelicans. So the Pelicans is our disagreement there.
This is why, like,
make the case. Yeah.
Well, no, I'm not making any case right now. I will. But this is where, like, regular season record, like, it is important for Minnesota to be, like we talked about that, the seeding thing, like, depending on how you think it shakes out, like, it's important for Minnesota to have a good record to give themselves the best opportunity to not play one of these types of teams that we think are so close with them in the first round. If you fall to like 4, it's more likely than not one of these teams is waiting for you, I think, at 5. So that's why, like, regular season matters, in that you would prefer to play like a Houston or somebody like that, who I think we're very confident that they would beat in the first round, or even like the Lakers or whatever the case may be. That's why regular season record really does matter. Like, I know Tim Connolly's always been like a top four home court guy, but like, you just listed off, what was it, 5 teams or 4 teams?
I list off 4. So I have
4
the
teams
Wolves
that you don't think they would beat.
Yeah.
And so like, so that makes it very realistic that they don't get out of the first round if they fall in like the 4 seed and face one of those teams.
Right.
That's why, I mean, just like right now, like, and it's turned in, it has really like shriveled up the standings. Like I said, like 1 through 7s within 4 games. That's why I think tonight's game against Orlando is pretty important. Like, if you lose this game, you're probably going to lose tomorrow in Boston. Like, even the most optimistic person would be like, back to back in Boston. Boston's the best team in the league. Not likely. Like, now you're like really in the thick of it. I think it's important for them to be like 1 or 2 if they want to give themselves the best chance to get out of the first round, which I think we both agree, if they didn't get out of the first round, this would not be considered a good season by any stretch.
Sure. Yeah. The one team neither of us have on there that I think I would have had on here a month ago to beat the Wolves would be Sacramento. And that might be some recency bias of seeing them have played better against the Kings in Sacramento. I think that was December 23rd. And that one was without KAT. Yeah, no, that's but that is part of my equation of believing the Wolves would beat the Kings, is understanding in that matchup, and you have some proof of concept, at least from one regular season game, that that is a matchup that you might not be able to stick to your identity of playing big and staying big. And that has to be okay. Some too. I think Oklahoma City stresses that a little bit too. They ironically played the Thunder a couple days after that Kings game, and KAT was back. And I think Oklahoma City, given their smaller size and given that the Wolves had some success against that, I think there was an understandable confidence from Finch and the coaching staff to be like, all right, like stick with our guns and play big. But both of those matchups now I feel like require a little bit of an identity or, style size adjustment from the Wolves. I was actually close on the Thunder one though, too.
I was too. Yeah. I mean, I think there are a couple games where Oklahoma City would have a hard time scoring. Yeah. I think all of those that I mentioned, I don't think any of those would be like the Wolves lose 4-1. I don't. I think those would be like all 6 or 7, like really competitive, lots of competitive, great series.
Right. Should we do better Okay, let me just repeat them here. Jace's 3 that he says as of January 9th would beat the Wolves in a playoff series are the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Los Angeles Clippers, and the New Orleans Pelicans. I say Denver, Oklahoma City, the Los Angeles Clippers, and the Phoenix Suns. Is it fair to say that the Clippers is the matchup we, as of today, would be most concerned about?
Yeah, just because I don't think the Wolves match up great in that, like, the Clippers can kind of do the 5-out thing to you. They can take Zubac out whenever they want to. They can guard Minnesota. Like, they have the wing defenders to do that. And the Clippers just, like, I think it's a really good team for James Harden. Like, seeing it now, like, I was just like, wow, you got another isolation player, really smart. But like, it literally has just added to, like, their trade-off abilities. And like, James Harden is also a creator as well. So like, there's just a lot off his shoulders, but like, he goes on these spurts where he's making things a little easier for others. And then like, he's very much like, okay, we need you to pick it up right now. And he does. The Clippers look really good. That's worked out a lot better than I thought it was going to when that trade was made. And I know, like, for them, it always comes down to like health and everything. Can you even get that far with all of your bodies? But I think Harden like helps alleviate the stress of the regular season as well. I think they're tough for anybody right now.
Yeah, let's revisit it on Tuesday. Let's remember to do that when we record after the game on Sunday, because again, I am willing to be influenced by seeing. I think that matters, given that we're not just talking about in a Wolves matchup the matchup of talents, their talent versus another team's talent. We're talking about matchups of styles, and that one for me, I need to see more of. It's why I've been willing to move again the Sacramento one, kind of at least be confused by the New Orleans Pelicans one right now. I'm not like I'm on the fence on that. But that's
what do you like about Minnesota and the New Orleans series? What do you like about them there? Because I'm just going off of, like, we had the game that New Orleans didn't have like a lot of guys, and the Wolves blew that one out. The game in New Orleans where Zion didn't play, it was like the Wolves had to escape that game. They won by 1. And then
no Ant in that one.
No Ant in the
in
the other New Orleans game that New Orleans dominated, and then obviously New Orleans dominated the one at Target Center as well.
Part of it is
I don't know if Zion's going to be playing in the playoffs.
Right.
Well, I'll believe that when I see it. I mean, because he has not ever played has he played any postseason basketball? I don't think he's been in either play-in. So we'll see on that. Like, they might not be an issue at that point, because if he's not out there, I don't think that at all. Even though Game 82 was very competitive without him last year, but still, like, I don't know.
Right.
I was also without Rudy for the most part at like 20% health.
Right. I think part of it is I think the Wolves in that matchup might force New Orleans to play smaller.
Yeah, like Valanciunas is not. He gets in foul trouble so early in those matchups, and
he can't play against the KAT and Naz lineups. That really stood out to me in the last matchup, even though the Wolves lost.
Agreed.
And I'm saying, like, I actually think a smaller team might provide problems for the Wolves, but at the same time, that's not New Orleans' identity throughout the season. It's not what they're practicing. They're like the Wolves, trying to be a big team that stays big. And again, I think it would be close. I think a lot of it for me comes down to, Ant and kind of believing in part of the best player theory, or the player I trust most to elevate in those moments. And I don't know, like Zion's a question mark there too. Do I trust Brandon Ingram to do that? Not really. CJ, I think he'll be fine. It's close for me, and I could flip on that again, but it's mostly a respect for the Wolves' body of work thus far this season. I will say I was looking at just the last month, right? The Wolves 14 games into the 16 games of the thing, and the team with the best point differential in the league over this past month is New Orleans, as the Wolves have kind of slid to the middle of the pack. They're 11th in that time. I mean, some of these, this influenced me some. New Orleans has played really well recently. The Clippers have played really well recently. Denver's played really well recently. Oklahoma City has played recently. Those are the teams, I'm picking over them. And then Phoenix is more of a matchup-based pick.
We've seen it, man. Like, this is 2 years in a row where, like, at full strength, New Orleans is really good.
Yeah.
And last year, obviously, then Zion went out. They had like the second best record in the West, and then Zion went out, and now we're seeing it again. Like, I don't know if they can get to the finish line. Like, it's the tantalizing thing about the Clippers and the Pelicans is they've had these rosters, and we're like, it's really good. I mean, they're all out there, it looks really good, and then we just never see it in the playoffs because they just don't make it. So that's why this West is so hard to predict, because like, if those teams are at full strength, we don't know. We've not seen them in the playoffs. I mean, like, we haven't. I mean, when have we seen Kawhi and PG like lineups in the playoffs? The bubble? Is that it? I mean, is that it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's why this is an interesting question. And to your point off the top of like why I think we should just be excited about these playoffs in general, Wolves or otherwise, it is going to be a matchup, and it is these teams that all have the Wolves included.
We haven't seen these Wolves at full strength. In
the Clippers podcast is doing the same thing. It is like, okay,
I don't know
cool.
about
Like,
the Wolves. Yeah, right.
Yeah, like they have the number one defense, but what about Gobert in the play? It's the same thing, and a lot of those questions like that one are like half legitimate, and that's why it's going to be a fun playoffs.
And like, so much can change between now and then. And like, this time last year, maybe it was more like December, I was like very questionable of Denver because of like defensively. I was like, I just don't think they have it. But over like the course of like the next 2 or 3 months, up until like they clinched everything and just went off a cliff after that. But they played really good defense. They totally locked down on that end of the court, and it was like, that's not so much of a question mark anymore. And I don't know if they ever like figured out how to stop like elite guards, but you're gonna have some crux, but they just improved a lot on that end of the court, and then they were much more playoff ready, I think, by the end of the year than they were in December, even when they had a really good record. So like, there's a lot to be determined now and then, just between like improvement, like you said, with Phoenix, like as they kind of maybe actually get some games with Booker, Durant, and Beal, and figure out what they need around that. Maybe there's some trade deadline activity, like just a lot to be determined.
Let's just quickly wrap this with better record rest of season. So does that change for you? Do you think Oklahoma City, the Clippers, and the Pelicans all have better records than the Wolves the rest of the season?
No. I mean, I just think that the Wolves, I think the Wolves will finish with a really good record, because even if like they struggle against certain matchups, even if they struggle against like top tier teams and whatnot, I will never stop thinking it is a massive advantage that the Wolves take every game seriously. Yeah. And that absolutely means like, playing hard against bad teams this year, but it more so means like everybody plays every game. Giving yourself your full complement of guys to attack every game. Like, other teams are punting like a few games, so that's automatically like 3, 4, 5 games that you're giving yourself over everybody else. So even on like the back-to-backs that come up and stuff, they're going to win a few of them because they're playing everybody still. They're not sitting anybody. So that's where I like, record-wise, just like circumstantial, I just think that Minnesota takes the regular season, their coaching staff, their organization takes the regular season so seriously, specifically this year, obviously, and since Finch has been here, that I do think that they can. I might not think they're as good as another team, but I do think they'll win more games than another team to give themselves a better positioning come playoffs, which matters as much as anything else.
Exactly. That's why we need to kind of fuse these two things together, because I'm on that too. In like, I think that matters a lot, and I think it's why my list of teams that I think will have a better record than the Wolves the rest of the season is shorter than that other list. I didn't have the Pelicans beating the Wolves in a playoff series. I'm close on that. I think the Pelicans might have a better record the rest of this season. I'm seeing a good amount of them recently, seeing them at full strength. That's buying into the idea that they can be full strength or close to it. Mm-hmm. But that team hasn't shown that they can stay at full strength. And that's why I'm like, I don't know. So I had a question mark next to them kind of in both of them. It's really close for me. Wolves versus Pelicans there. Denver was the one team I do kind of feel confident is going to have a better record the rest of the season.
Which means that you probably have them as the 1 seed.
Yeah. Yep. And that's an important factor in the kind of macro conversation of this. I do think the Wolves will have a better record than the Clippers and the Suns the rest of the regular season, which are 2 teams I said they'd lose to in the playoffs. And then Oklahoma City's close for me. So if I had to pick it, I would say Denver and Oklahoma City better records the rest of the season than the Wolves. The Wolves and Pelicans kind of right there as the 3 for the record for the rest of the year in the West.
And here's where like we've mentioned even teams that you think might beat the Wolves, I think might beat the Wolves. I think we both think they would be like 6-7 game series or whatever. Like home court will matter. Like if you play in the second round series against Oklahoma City, who's the 2 and who's the 3? Like that will matter. So that's where like these like it's going to be like 2 games left in the regular season to be like the Wolves need to win one of these to clinch the 2 seed or whatever, and like that's going to be a huge deal.
No, and they are going to do everything they can to put themselves in those positions. It's been something we've been told by Finch over and over again, by Conley, by the roster, and there has been 0 signs of anything else. If the Wolves aren't like competing at a high level, it's because they're retired, in a road trip or something like that. This team plays, and that's going to help their regular season record. That's why Denver's the only team I would somewhat confidently bet on having a better record than the Wolves for the rest of this season. Jace, let's grab a break here. We're going to do our Prize Picks spot. Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks, prizepicks.com, or the Prize Picks app. We do have a $100 sign-up bonus that you can get by using the promo code Dane. We got NFL Wild Card Week. Is it still called Wild Card Weekend?
It is, even though it's literally every division winner 2 except 1. But yeah, it's the one the wild card teams play in. That's for sure.
The NFL, the week the wild card teams play in is happening here. I honestly was like excited when I texted. I'm like, oh, it'll be fun. We get Prize Picks on the
They're
NFL
not all up yet. Like, it's definitely not a full complement of them up. So like the passing ones are, but you see, that's only, that's their 12 quarterbacks playing this weekend, and there's 8 up.
Yeah. And that's, I just haven't really been focusing on the NFL a lot this week. I actually probably will read and follow up on some more stuff before Saturday, Sunday, Monday. But I was just looking at this spread of quarterbacks here, and out of Joe Flacco, CJ Stroud, Tua Tagovailoa, Patrick Mahomes, Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff, Jalen Hurts, and Baker Mayfield, Joe Flacco has the highest passing yard number.
Yeah, he's been a gunslinger since he's been in there.
I know. And it obviously certainly could happen, but like that stuff just goes off in my head. And so what I did for my 2 picks was Joe Flacco less than 278.5 yards passing, and CJ Stroud less than 250.5 yards passing. I mean, they're both going to sling it, but I also that Cleveland defense is really good. So those were my 2 NFL picks.
That reads like a Browns win to me if that happens.
Yeah, maybe.
I took 2 overs because more thans. I don't know because that's what we do usually. I don't know why
that's true. Oh, I'm mixing it up.
Yeah, I don't like that. I went Amon-Ra St. Brown and Puka Nacua, both going more than their receiving totals. Amon-Ra at 85.5, Puka at 78.5. I think that game, it's got the highest over-under of the week.
Okay.
I think there'll be a lot of yards, a lot of points in that game. Like, that's the one I'm most excited for. Obviously, it's the Stafford versus Goff revenge both ways. Like, I just think, like, Detroit's defense has been a little better lately, but it's not great. Still, we saw, Justin Jefferson go for about 1 million yards on Sunday. Puka Nacua has been great lately. I'm sure Stafford will be motivated. Like that's something like that's the game I'm most excited to watch, hands
down. Yeah, I'm with that too. That's right when the Wolves are playing the Clippers too, right?
Well, the Wolves play at 6, so like we could theoretically.
Yeah, we'll watch like the fourth
second
quarter
half.
In the media room.
Second half of the game, like when we're working and I'm just staring at the TV and not getting any transcribing done. It's like Jace hasn't got his transcription done in 20 minutes, and I'm just like staring.
Yes. So if you want to go with the 4 picks that Jace and I have, that would be if you did a $10 bet on that, it would pay 10-1 or pick any 4 of your own. That's kind of how the payout structure works on that. We've talked about they'll have different like boosters and stuff like that you can look at closer to this weekend. But those are our NFL picks for this weekend. And then just quickly, Jace, I was looking at the board here for the Wolves game for tonight. Ant at 30 points is his number. Jaden McDaniels is 11. KAT is 21.5. Mike Conley is 10.5. Gobert is 12.5 points. I think this is a good game for KAT. I would like to think, and so that was the one that stood out for me. There was just looking for a bigger game from KAT. His point total again 21.5, and his rebound total is 8. I think I would take more than more than 21.5 and 8 tonight. Makes sense to me.
I would do I thought Paolo Banchero's number, and we're going to talk about this. It's probably a good segue into like the matchup, but I would go less than on his points.
Okay.
It's like 28, and I know he's been filling it up, but I would go less than tonight.
Yep, his number is 28 there. So, anyways, if you're listening to this on Tuesday afternoon, you can take a look at the board for the Wolves Magic game here. Again, this is PrizePicks.com or on the PrizePicks app. Promo code Dane for a $100 sign up bonus. I do want to talk a little bit about Orlando and Boston, but first, I just haven't talked to you at all about the Dallas game. Chris and I talked about it some afterwards. I have a few stray thoughts or whatever, but what do you want to discuss about? And I guess we could talk about Houston too. That just these last 2 games and what you've seen from the Wolves.
Yeah, I mean, Houston game I thought was a great bounce back. I think Houston's a good matchup for Minnesota, but I just liked the way they played in general. I thought the ball movement was pretty good. And then I thought defensively, they just looked like that's the closest they've looked in a long time to I thought the team that they were the first month and a half of the year. Sure. It's okay, it's still in there. Not to say they've been terrible in recent weeks. It just hasn't been dominant, but the Dallas game to me, those games are so. I just don't understand how there can't be more easy buckets for Rudy Gobert out there. Things where he's just finishing. Not you're asking to do any more than lobs or just seals where he's just getting the ball turning and dunking. I just think there should be more opportunities like that out there, particularly in the minutes when Dwight Powell's not on the court, but even still Dwight Powell's not really this big physical defender. I know we always look for KAT and those types of things, but KAT's going to get double teams and whatnot and different defensive looks. But I just think that Rudy you have to be able to punish teams for going really small with Rudy on the offensive end. And I know people point to the turnovers and whatnot, but a lot of that's 2 of the turnovers was the lost rebound. And then in a rolling situation, I'm not talking about those, just seal, catch, finish.
Right.
I
when you have Derek Jones Jr. on you.
Yeah, that's got to be out there. I mean, that's got to
Josh Green.
They have to take more advantage of those things. They have to find that within the offense because right now, when the other team goes small, the Wolves' only advantage is that Ant just feasts without a rim protector. That's it. That's what they get out of it when the other team goes small, and that's great. But I just feel there've got to be more free points out there where you cannot be the same dominant defense when the other team goes small, but you should be able to play them out of it with what you get offensively.
Right. I will say he did some of that in the first half on the offensive glass.
Yeah, and that's the only place he's going to get it, but I don't think he took a shot in the second half.
Yeah, well, he didn't. I think he had 3 boards and a few turnovers was his entire second half stat line. And Dallas, to their credit, I think they adjusted the game plan. They were all right, no longer single coverage on KAT in the post. It wasn't Einstein level coaching there, but they did make that adjustment. So that was taken away. And then they put 2 on the ball on Ant. And like, I don't know. Every team just doesn't do both of those things every single game, but Dallas did in the second half. And that kind of made it more difficult for Ant, made it more forced Karl onto the perimeter a little bit more. Actually really liked Karl's like aggression shooting on the perimeter, particularly in the fourth quarter, but they did need something more on the interior. And when Ant's getting blocked off from being able to drive by getting a double up top and Karl's not in the post, it is the time where you need something more to like puncture the paint. And to your point, like, that has to be Gobert. I don't love those options that you're talking about, like a duck in or like any sort of post up thing, but it's because I guess I don't believe that he's going to be able to be really effective, even if that is Josh Green or Derek Jones Jr. on him in those situations. I'm not saying it doesn't need to be, but at a minimum, it needs to be 4 quarters of Rudy on the offensive glass, punishing them in that way, and to that playoff matchup too. Like if that doesn't happen, I mean, we both picked the Wolves over Dallas in that matchup, but it only works if Rudy can do that offensively.
I just think, like, I tweeted after the game, like, I was like, Wolves really struggle with small ball. I don't think that's controversial. And people are like, well, like, Kyrie and Luka just played great tonight, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I'm not saying that. And I think the Wolves are much better than Dallas. I'm saying, like, when a team like Dallas, who I think personnel-wise is significantly lower than Minnesota, when they can level the playing field by going small, that's a problem, because then you see, like, teams that have great talent, like Oklahoma City, would not really provide problems when they go small. So I just think, like, 5-out defensive, like, I just don't think that it's great to be like, part of our strategy is literally just to leave people from 3, because I know Derek Jones Jr. missed like his last 5 after making 1, but like if you remember, like when Utah lost to Dallas, and I think Rudy's last series in Utah, it was like Maxi Kleber was hitting like 5-6 threes in the game. It's like, and that's somebody that the Wolves would probably also have to be like, well, we got to leave him. And for me, it's just like, it's hard to say, like, a guy where it's like he's instructed to shoot the ball, he knows to shoot it when he's open, probably going to give him like the best chance to hit those shots, because that's game planned in. Just like living and dying with like, well, we hope that guy misses open threes. It's just really hard to do, especially come playoff time when offense is harder, where like you're just seeding open threes to somebody who can make them. Not like it's like Josh Okogie Timberwolves era, like it's guys who like can hit threes. That to me is like, you'd like to find a better solution than that. When the other team is going with 5 seconds.
Well, and the solution to that is to play the high wall better.
I agree.
That's why those were so open. And I will say Luka is the best at beating the high wall in the NBA.
At least in the past, he had to skip pass. I mean, this was just like the most basic pass. Right. And I understand that that's because Minnesota is like, you don't want to leave the guy in the corner for Derek Jones Jr. I get that. But Derek Jones Jr. figured out for himself. He's like, wait, I'm just going to eat this space and dunk it at the end of the game. It's like, yeah, that's there too if you want it.
It was interesting. Dwight Powell had that one, like in the fourth quarter, like rolling to the basket, and it was an easy finish. There's just like no low man resistance there for the Wolves. You remember I was rewatching the game, the Dallas game last night, and the Kyrie play where he took it from Rudy. He basically like gets up, like steals it.
Did that ball go out of bounds? It was really close.
I don't know. I mean, I didn't pick up on that.
When I first watched it, I was like, I swear that went out of bounds, but it doesn't.
No, I wasn't looking close enough at it. Yeah. But so Kyrie like gets steals it fumbles it. Rudy grabs it, steals it back from Rudy, like kicks it back out to the perimeter and goes to the right corner. And it was right after that Powell had dunked rolling down the lane. Wolves come up in the high wall, and Luka gets off it to Derek Jones Jr. right above the break, and Jaden comes in to take away Dwight Powell on the roll, and Jaden's on Kyrie in the corner, and then it's just Luka to Derek Jones Jr. to Kyrie in the corner there for the 3. And as I'm rewatching that, I'm like, this should be the Wolves offense. Whenever Ant gets doubled there. Right. Rudy is better at that dive into the basket than Dwight Powell is. should be just as much of the threat. You have to bring the KAT's man from the corner to come over to tag him there. Ant gets doubled at the top, swing it to Jaden above the break, who swings it to Karl in the corner. Like, that is how you break putting 2 on the ball at the top there, is having an elite shooting guy in the corner, like Kyrie is. But that's just, when I say like Karl in the corner, that's what it looks like. That's what it can look like. That's what it can look like in crunch time. And it doesn't need to be looked at as a disrespectful thing. They left Kyrie in the corner. It wasn't like Kyrie became a role player or anything like that.
It's but certain plays, that's where you're going. Certain actions, that's where you're going.
That one, I think, in particular, like, is
good point.
Should do that. But I wanted to talk about the Wolves sort of in their high wall, and it is different. I talked to Naz about this just like in the locker room afterwards and I was like, man, like, you guys were great at that, like, high wall, you know, the year before Gobert. I was like, it just wasn't like as sharp tonight. Like, what was that about? He's like, well, I didn't think of this. I thought it was a good point. He's like, well, it's a little bit different now when you're bringing me or KAT up into that and we're guarding a wing.
Mm-hmm.
Like when Derrick Jones Jr. is coming up to set that screen, or Josh Green is, and Naz or KAT are on that. He's like, it just like takes like, you need to be thinking about it differently. Whereas when those guys were playing high wall back in 21-22, you know, they're guarding Dwight Powell in that situation. So I think, again, Dallas is really good at breaking that down. That would probably, even in a playoff series, like Luka and Kyrie would probably figure that out some to score good offense. And then the Wolves would need to have better offense to win the series. But it's important that the Wolves get good at that they figure out the high wall with KAT or Naz at the 4, whatever, just more effective doing that, like they've shown they have been pre-Gobert, because it's not just Luka and Kyrie, right? You might need to put 2 on the ball on Booker. You might need to put 2 on the ball on Shea, Paul George, Kawhi, maybe even De'Aaron Fox. Like, I'm going to be tracking that against some more of these potent scorer teams. Like, does the Wolves high wall get a little bit more sharp, like we have seen it be in the past? And I think it's probably just a reps thing, to Naz's point of like, all right, I got to think about this a little bit differently now that I'm guarding a wing rather than a 5 in ball screen, an aggressive ball screen action defense.
Yeah, and I do remember from that year, like, it was even then, like, the elite wings and guards kind of had their way with it. Like I think Booker picked it apart pretty well in like a game where
Trae Young one game too.
Yeah,
Garland one time. I remember.
Yeah. So like they're like the guards who are great scorers and decision makers, like they kind of had their way with it. So I think Luka, even back then, like I remember when the Wolves would beat Dallas that year, it was like home games where like Dallas has bricked a ton of open threes, you know, like, and they just didn't make any of those shots because Luka picked it apart and his teammates really let him down in those games. So like, I think that's true. It's just hard to go to those looks when like, that's like Luka's seen that look a million times. I think you can be as sharp as you can be, and like, they're going to get fair looks out of it. I don't know. Like to me, like it just, the whole game, and Finch said this, like Ant kind of blew up some pick and rolls with his own physicality. Like he was really like locked in on like his individual matchup in that game. Like to me, at his best, and I don't mean this like in a disrespectful way to Jaden, but like at his best, when he is super locked in on the ball, like, he is a better on ball defender than Jaden McDaniels in my mind, because his physicality,
his physicality is different.
It's just physicality bothers these players, most of these guys. There are probably some guys that are different, but like physicality bothers Brandon Ingram more than length. Like physicality bothers Luka Doncic more than length. Like it's even Kyrie more than length. Like they just seem to know how to like get around guys, but like when you get into them and they can't get anywhere where they want to go, that seems to bother guys a lot more. I know it's different. I know like it's kind of apples and oranges, but and maybe it just comes down to like physicality, and he's able to do it a lot without fouling.
Right.
So I just think like, if I had to get a stop late in the game, like I would put Ant on whoever it was, because then they can't get where they want to go.
And
they're used to hitting shots with a hand in their face. They're not used to like, I can't get to that one spot that I always hit my shots in.
That's the Ingram there for sure. Like I think Jaden, maybe like Cole Anthony tonight, like that. I think that's going to be hard for Cole Anthony because Jaden's got like 10 inches on him. Jalen Brunson, if he's on him there too, but that's different than Kyrie. And then certainly size wise, that's different than Luka. I like that move. I like that move at the end of that game. And if the Wolves win that game, I said this with Chris, I was like, that's what we're talking about afterwards. A good adjustment by Finch and Ant and Jaden to be like, oh, we switched Ant onto Luka, Jaden onto Kyrie there, and it was effective. I think mostly it's nice to have three really good on-ball options.
Yep.
Jaden, Ant, and Nikhil, and three guys who don't need to do it for the whole game because
yep.
Nikhil, you don't want to play for more than 24 minutes or whatever. Jaden can't play more than like 35 minutes due to foul trouble, and Ant can't play 48 minutes of, I mean, not even 24 minutes of like aggressive defense there. So
right.
It's good to have numerous options there, and I want to give that credit for like why this team is, you know, number one in defense, or still been there too. It's, you know, Rudy, great defensive season. I think that's dropped a little bit recently, but that they're still over this past month, like fifth, I think, in defense.
I would be so interested to see when you took out, I saw those numbers, the 8-6, everything. I mean, they're 5-5 in the games that everybody's played in, like, because Ant didn't play and the Pelicans lost. And then you take out the Halliburton game, the two non-Irving games. Like, you just see Dallas is way different when Kyrie Irving is out there when he's not. So, like, I'd be interested to see what the numbers look like when you took those games out of the equation. But obviously, that's not really doable.
Right. We're going to talk about Orlando and Boston here quickly. Just one more quick break to say, go to Falling Knife for the Wolves Celtics game on Wednesday. I think that will be a fun one to watch with people. Hopefully the Wolves are playing all their players and rested enough to be able to compete with the Celtics there. But that's part of the reason why I'm on this trip. I want to see that game in person. I think if you are, you know, someone who's invested in this Wolves team this year, like you got that Celtics matchup circled on your calendar. And if you want to go watch that with other Wolves fans, I'm sure there'll be plenty of people there at Falling Knife this week. Obviously an option for all Wolves games tonight. If you're listening to this before the Magic game starts, there'll be people there as well. That's Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis. All right, Jace, let's talk about those Orlando and Boston matchups a little bit.
I want to be the first to give Minnesota a pass if they lose by like 20 points in Boston. I would give them a pass.
Okay.
End of a road trip. I understand, like back to back, second half of back to back. Like, I think that's why I think this Orlando game is huge because like if they somehow won in Boston, like, wow, amazing.
Sure.
If you know, especially if, like Tatum and everybody's playing. I don't know. Tatum didn't play last night, did he? I don't know. Why was that?
I'm not sure. I
just looked at the box score and he did not play. So I was like, I don't know if he just had like a maintenance day or whatever. But
yeah, well, that'd be big. And I mean, and that's we're kind of in that point of the season here too, where it's like just check the injury report, like day of. I know Orlando's had a lot of guys like in and out of the lineup recently and injured, and it's that time of year. It's maintenance time of year, and maybe it will be for the Wolves at some point too. Maybe even that game will be a game where I know you're like, I don't think so because
it's gonna be somebody misses. Yeah, it's not gonna be somebody sits. Like, but
right. I want to talk about the Magic one a little bit. And even if people are listening to this after the Magic game, still want to talk about it some. I don't know. Everyone, I'm sure, doesn't know this about you, Jace, is you also cover high school sports in Minnesota, and obviously have covered a lot of the Jalen Suggs, the Trey Jones, and those guys as they kind of came up. I know we've talked about Suggs a lot over the last 3 years, and I've always been like, yeah, I don't know, man. Like,
I didn't know it's points there. I mean,
yeah, like without the shot, I was like, what is the, like, how far can this go? We were texting about it. Like, I watched the last couple of games, man, and he's developed a shot and a confidence in his shot, and that opens up a whole new level for him and what he can be in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing was like, what's going to be his calling card? Like, as an NBA player, to be like a starter level player, because I wasn't sure he was going to be a starter level player for a while there. And then, like, defensively, he's been so amazing. It's just so fun to watch. Everybody is like, this is an all NBA like defender. I mean, it really is like, it is like in your grill defense for 48 minutes. I mean, however long, 38 when he's out on the court, like physicality, because he's such a great athlete and he's so physical. Like, this was the Mr. Football winner his senior year of football. Like, and it was playing, like some defensive back and quarterback. And even like in high school, like he was the best basketball player. It wasn't just because like, oh, this is the most skilled dude. Like he certainly was that, but like he just played a really physical brand of basketball back then. But like he's cranking it up defensively to a level that really nobody plays at for the entire game. Like it's Jared Vanderbilt with a little more physical gifts and like wherewithal. Like it literally is like that. Like there's no wasted motions in it and whatnot. Loose balls, he's all over the court. And I don't know, I think maybe like obviously he's worked on shooting like over the summer, and that's paid off. He's shooting like 40%. But I also think when you like establish an identity and you know who you are on one end of the court, it frees you up on the other end. He's just playing, everything he's doing right now is super competent. He literally is the reason though that it's a super young team. You look at across the board, it's like not a ton of great defenders here. And they had the 4th best defense. Because that's how important point of attack defense is in the NBA.
It really, there's so much resistance watching them play. Like that, and it starts with him and like the other like not good defenders compete too. That's like Orlando is
that's a tone set too though. Like when
that's what they do. That's why Orlando's good this year. Is they like it's a bunch of guys who think they're a lot better than their perception and probably are. Maybe not a lot better, but they're somewhat better than what their perception is. And that makes for an interesting, like hard-nosed playing team that probably is going to perform better in the regular season than they will in the playoffs. It's that like classic kind of young team, and maybe would need more before that. But I like those type of teams, and it's watching them beat Denver and Atlanta these last 2 games. I'm like, it's becoming one of those teams where I'm like, oh, this is going to be like my fun watch, like tuning into them a little bit more. Kind of reminds me of like the Thunder in that Chris Paul year or something like that. Just like an interesting coming of age team that's also already kind of good. And I'm curious to see how the Wolves handle that there. It's a game that they are going to have a talent advantage in. It really comes down to guarding Banchero, I think. And when we're talking about playoff matchups, and when we've been talking about this team recently, I've had this thought of like, man, that big kind of playmaking for what's the Wolves' answer for that? Julius Randle gave them problems. Zion Williamson did a couple of games later. How do you think they will approach that? Because they guarded Randle with KAT and Anderson, and then they guarded Zion with Ant and Naz, which are like kind of similar players, but a completely different choice of how to do it. How do you think they'll approach that matchup?
I am interested to see, like, he's physical, like Banchero is physical, like, but he's not quite as physical, I don't think, as Randall and Zion. So like, I am like, is this like the base? Is this can Jaden guard him? Like, can he be the most physical guy that Jaden can guard? Because I do think like Jaden's length would bother Banchero a little bit.
Yeah.
But so I think that would be worth a shot. I wouldn't be surprised if that's even how they started it, but because like guard wise, I'm not
really thinking about that.
Maybe he goes on Franz, Jaden, but like I don't know.
Yeah, Franz. I don't think Franz is playing. He's been out with the ankle injury. I don't know what the update is for today.
I wouldn't be surprised at all if Jaden's on Banchero to start the game. I just think maybe that is like the peak of like, okay, this guy's physical, but not too physical for Jaden.
Yeah, no, and that was the question and the answer that Finch and the coaching staff came to. Julius Randle, too physical, just weighs 50, 60 pounds more than Jaden or something like that, and Zion too. So they moved away from it. You're right to say that maybe Banchero is more in the Jaden range. I guess I was more thinking about it as the Naz and Ant one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If you're going
if you're not going with Jaden, it's that one. I mean, I think we have come to like KAT against fives in the Rudy Lurking lineup. Like that is the Wolves. I was wrong about it. The Wolves' best matchup against Denver and Jokic is that, right? Put KAT on Jokic, have Rudy lurk. I don't think against these fours that it is the right thing to put Karl on them. And to that end, I think then it becomes Ant probably in that matchup, or Jaden. I'll be curious to see how they approach that. I'd also just like one game to see Rudy take that, like Randall or Zion or whatever that might. I get you don't want to give Zion like the run up and anything, but it'd be cool to see a game where Rudy guards one of those guys one-on-one the whole time, just so like as a evidence point or something there too. But those are just the type of matchups.
Yeah, you might as well try it at some point, right?
Exactly. That's mostly what I'm thinking there. And then any just final like Boston thoughts in that matchup, other than you said right off the top, like you're not expecting much given it's the end of a road trip and all of that.
Yeah, I'm not. It was a great matchup the last time these two teams played. Obviously, they both have defensive identities. It's been great when they play, and frankly, even like last year, they played that great game at Target Center too. I just think it's one of those times where like the NBA schedule gets in the way of like what could be a great matchup. Maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully, I'm wrong. Wolves will play their guys, but I think it looked like when they played in Phoenix.
Yeah, I get that thought process. I'm going to look at Ant. It's going to be like first 6 minutes of that game. Where's Ant from?
If they lose tonight, it's more likely that they play better tomorrow, I think.
Yeah. That's true. You could see in the Phoenix game coming off of a back-to-back from Golden State, like right away, Ant didn't have that juice. It looked like Ant on a back-to-back his rookie year where he just didn't have his conditioning there yet. I'd love to see Ant be like, okay, yeah, it's a back-to-back, whatever. We're playing the Celtics, we're playing Jason Tatum and those guys, and he has the mentality he had in that other Boston matchup. And if he does have that, if he can turn the key to that, then the Wolves are in that matchup. I think they're in that game, but without it, which sounds like more like what you're betting on being the case, then it's not surprising if it's a 15, 20, 25 point loss there, but it's against a high talent team, and Boston is up there as much as anyone else says. The Wolves' top end talent, Ant and KAT, and KAT stunk in the last Boston game. Maybe you get more out of KAT in that matchup too, and he recognizes the moment some there as well. I don't know. I think everybody's going to chalk that up as a 20-point loss. I'm leaving room for that to maybe be close and kind of like the Dallas game, maybe falling short at the end and losing by 4 or 5 or something like that. Curious to see.
I appreciate you going, I'm traveling to this game. I hope it's good.
Yeah, that's true.
I appreciate that, your mindset there.
Yeah, and then I'm going to get the notification. It's like, all right, Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert are resting, and Jason Tatum's not playing.
Not happening. There's right. No way that would happen with the Wolves. That would literally go against everything they ever say.
Yeah, that's true. But it could be like a little, I don't know. You're right. I have pretty much let go of the idea that the Wolves are going to rest it all. And I guess that's just part of their identity this season. Either way, this is going to be two fun games in the next 48 hours. The Orlando game tonight, and Britt and I will record after the Orlando game. Britt's actually coming out to Orlando, or is out in Orlando here as well for that one. And then I will be in Boston as well, and we will talk after that one. Jace, appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
You can read, Jace, I didn't read it yet. Sorry. You wrote about Jalen Suggs for today and kind of what he's doing this season. And obviously you're following all of Jace's work at the Pioneer Press, and you're following him on Twitter at Jace Frederick. Until tomorrow morning with Britt, he's Jace. I'm Dane. Peace out. How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.